Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Atheist Experience. We are live today. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Atheist Experience. We are live. It's Pi Day, and you are in luck. The very special pie for today is that Aron Ra has agreed to drive all the way down from Dallas to join us. He was on the Nonprofits program yesterday as well. So thank you very much and welcome.
Pleasure to be here.
We're going to get the normal announcements out of the way as quickly as possible. There's already people waiting on the phones. We're going to do pretty much straight callers all day long and have a good time. As I mentioned, this is a live program. It's sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. The ACA has weekly meetings every Sunday at Romeo's on Barton Springs Road, beginning at around 11:30. All of our events are open to the public. Any atheist or atheist-friendly person is welcome to attend. You don't have to be a member to attend, as long as you're not coming down to preach, proselytize, provoke, punch, pester, pick on. You're welcome. And we encourage conversations and debates and discussions and friendly meals and whatever else you might want to do, both at that event and the other events that we do. In addition to this program, the ACA also sponsors a bi-weekly internet audio podcast that I mentioned previously, The Nonprofits. You can go to nonprofitsradio.com, that's P-R-O-P-H-E-T-S, for more information about that show. We were live yesterday. Aron joined us yesterday, and we'll be live again in 2 weeks. For more information about the ACA, you can visit the website, www.atheist-community.org. There's a frequently asked questions page. There is information about our various events, and very soon there will be a link to the position statements that the Board of Directors approved this morning. The ACA has weekly meetings at Romeo's, as I mentioned, except for the first Sunday of the month when we host our lecture series at the Austin History Center, located at the corner of 9th and Guadalupe. We have a happy hour every Thursday at the Dog and Duck Pub, located at 17th and Guadalupe. And on the second Sunday of every month, in addition to the event at Romeo's, we have our board meeting. Any member can come and participate. Only board members can vote. You can find out more information at the website. And there's also a website specific to this program that you can go and check out. It's atheist-experience.com, and there you will find a link to an archive section that includes shows from the past 12 years in both video format at Google Video and Blip TV, and audio formatted, downloadable, and as a podcast. We're streaming the show live, as always, over Ustream. There's more information at the link on how to connect there as well. You can watch the show live. You can participate live because it's a call-in show. We'll have the number up shortly. We are not just limited to taking callers from the Austin area, although local callers typically have priority. Theistic callers have highest priority, and people who are not necessarily theistic but have something they want to discuss or raise a question, you have priority as well. If you're just calling to tell us, how much you appreciate the show, or you think we're doing a good job, or you love Aron's videos and things, we greatly appreciate it, but I don't think that people came to appreciate the show for the plaudits all the time. So we'll try and avoid those if we can. Drop us an email. You can always reach us at email, tv@atheist-community.org. That goes to myself, the co-host, some of the people behind the scenes as well. We get so much email that we can't possibly respond to all of it, but we do what we can, and we do read all of it. If you want to make sure that your email does not get eaten by the spam filters, please put either AETV or NPR for Nonprofits Radio in the subject line, and that will make sure that it at least gets through my filters. Other quick notes. Next week, this show will be later than normal. Our normal broadcast time is from 4:30 to 6 p.m. every Sunday on Channel 16, Grande and Time Warner. Next week, we are being preempted for more training at the studio. We will be on from 8 to 9:30 p.m., just like we were last month. This is going to be an ongoing thing. Once a month for the next few months, the show is going to be preempted from its normal slot, and the Public Access Studio has graciously allowed us to shift on those weeks to the 8 to 9:30 slot. We think we're going to be able to do it for all or most of them. However, some people decided that they were a little miffed that the Atheist Experience wasn't in its normal slot, and they took it upon themselves to call Channel Austin and complain. Don't do that. You're not doing any of us any favors. It's a public access studio. They get to use it however they want. Yes, we're pretty much like the only live call-in show, and this is when they needed the slot, so we got bumped for a little while. If anything, call and thank them for doing the studio renovations and making this service available to the public, because there are a lot of cities that don't have public access at all. And while I may occasionally complain about this or that, I am eternally grateful that we have this opportunity to get content out to the world. and not just in Austin. And it's been an amazing experience. We love getting email from everybody around the world. We're very appreciative, so please don't call to complain, because you didn't do us any favors by that. So that out of the way, the other events that are coming up, the ACA pub crawl will be Saturday the 20th. There's more information at the website, including where you can go or how to contact Mark to get t-shirts. And we'll go down as we normally do. We'll start at Dog and Duck and then walk downtown and just basically go from bar to bar as a mass of godless heathens, which would disturb people in other cities. But here in Austin, it kind of gets look what those guys are doing. But it's a lot of fun, and we encourage anybody that would like to come out. Also, you can find out more information about other ACA events like the street cleanup and the Texas American Atheist group and their Help the Homeless programs as well. So, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Pleasure to be here. Great day.
Yeah, it was a good day to drive down this weekend and everything else. You can see from behind. Just go ahead. Go ahead and make it full screen. Override us. For those people who aren't familiar with Aron's work, we're going to run a quick clip from one of his many YouTube videos, and you can remove us from the screen while we do it. Run it.
Big Bang. How was that created? Can you tell me that? Because if I understand you correctly, you're implying that if science can't tell you right now, today, exactly how that happened, then we may as well assume we'll never know. And might as well just forget everything we do know and stop trying to figure out anything more. We should just assume you're confused.
I don't know if you guys were actually able to hear that. We weren't able to hear it in the studio. I'm assuming the audio went out. But in case you weren't, we can go ahead and put up a link to his YouTube channel where you can go watch any number of videos there. You've done so much great work, specifically enlightening people in common sense language with plain thought that almost anybody could grasp about the problems with creationist claims, etc. How did you get started doing that?
Well, how I got started in the evolution versus creationism argument has been a lifelong story. I remember when I was a little kid and I would ask questions of my babysitter or anybody else, how does anything happen? I mean, especially if it involves God, how does God transform molecules of wine into molecules of water?
Right.
How does it do this? And I would always be reprimanded for asking the question. I was told all kinds of crazy things about how I wasn't supposed to question their position, or I was just supposed to blindly accept. And I had been given, I was at the advantage in the culture that I grew up in, is that they don't indoctrinate children until they're what they consider the age of reason, at 8 years old. And so, by that time, one of my teachers had given me a book on dinosaurs that happened to include a phylogenetic tree. And looking at that, of course, I made sense of the relationships of things, and I was able to determine that humans belong definitely in the category of apes. And so when it was finally presented to me that this other book was supposed to be the absolute truth, my immediate response is, it doesn't even explain why we are apes.
Yeah.
Among other things. And so there was a problem accepting the mythology. I tried to interpret it a different way. I thought that, like the story about how Eve is the one who enlightens Adam as to the nature of civilization. This is mind you, as a little child, how I'm reading this, and I'm thinking about it's like in the Old West when men show up and they have guns and there's brawls and a lot of open drinking in the street, and then women show up and everything kind of calms down a little bit. And I'm thinking, well, okay, well, so what you're going to do is you're going to tell a story to a group of people in the Middle East, and you're going to tell them that women brought them civilization and sanity, and now this is a culture that doesn't believe that women are capable of anything, so it can't be anything you actually give them credit for. It has to be a bad thing that you blame them for, and then you can't even give them credit for the blame. You have to come up with, concoct this snake that gave them the idea,
right,
because snakes can figure these things out where mere women cannot.
Well, talking snakes,
It seemed to me that telling the story in this way might be the way of getting it past the prejudices of the time and then down through the ages. This, obviously I was still a theist. I was trying to rationalize or apologize to try to make sense out of the story. How could it be true, even though it's not literally true? Mm-hmm. And eventually I encountered a whole other reality, which of course is that the story just wasn't true.
Well, on that note, we have full lines, and I'm imagining we'll probably have full lines all day long, and so there's not any point in waiting around any longer. We'll go ahead and get straight to callers. As a reminder, we'll put the telephone number back up as we clear lines. Anybody who doesn't get through on the telephone today or doesn't want to can always email tv@atheist-community.org. And after today's show is over, we'll be on the air till about 6 o'clock. Anyone in the Austin area who'd like to join us will be at Threadgills at 301 West Riverside Drive. And as before, any atheist or atheist-friendly person is welcome to come down for that as well. So we'll get right to calls. We've got Magic in Burnsville, North Carolina. Hello?
Yeah. Hello?
Yes.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How you guys doing?
Good. You had a question?
Yeah, I have a question. Yeah, I'm wondering.
Can we turn that up? I'm having a hard time hearing him.
I can't hear him either.
Okay. I'm wondering why you don't believe in God.
You're wondering why we don't believe in God.
Yeah. Just wondering.
My initial question, probably to respond to yours, would be, how could I?
Okay. How could you?
Where
Did we lose him?
Yeah, I'm still here.
you're still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Yeah. I don't know what's actually wrong with your phone. We'll try and address the topic after letting you go, but I apologize. We just can't hear you, and I don't know if it's a problem with your line or all lines, and we'll find out. But thanks for calling.
No.
The issue of why you don't believe in God, I mean, your first question was, how could I? My first question is, okay, which God? What exactly you're meaning? I don't want to make too many assumptions, but the answer can be the same.
Well, but I'm not making an assumption that he's talking about why don't I believe in the Christian concept of God? Why don't I believe in any supernatural entity that oversees reality? Okay, once we determine that exists, then we can refine down further attributes. But the initial assumption has to be justified first.
Yeah, and I think by and large we have similar answers. It's for the same reason that we don't believe anything that we don't accept. Belief is something that needs to be justified by evidence. You have to not only just define what it is that you're claiming and make the claim clear, but you have to support that claim with sufficient evidence. And so Aron's point of how could I cuts right to the chase on that. What is the reason that we should? And I wish that we hadn't had to drop that caller, because maybe then we could ask that question and get an answer as to why he thinks we should. Yeah. For now, though, we're going to have to move on. We've got Jason in Tampa.
Hi guys, how are you?
How you doing?
Good. Yeah, I think I corresponded with each of you via email. I was Jason from CFI Tampa, and we're trying to get you guys both down here to speak in sunny Tampa, Florida. So we're hoping to make that work.
Oh, good.
Anyhow, I'll save that for another time. I wanted to hear your discussion on the accommodationist movement that's kind of been going on with various scientific institutes and organizations like the National Academy of Sciences, NCSE, and a few others. And they're presenting this idea that religion and science are not in conflict, and publishing these things in some of their publications.
I don't know what's going on with the phones, but as soon as we turned it up a little bit, we got the feedback, and he chopped up.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna put you on hold, Jason, because I think we can address this a little bit, and then I'll get back to you if we didn't. So just hang on, and I'll let them work on the phones behind the scenes.
If I understood the question, he's asking, and I only heard part of it, he's asking why are science organizations now rallying to say that there is not a conflict between religion and science?
Right.
Okay. Well, because realistically there isn't. I mean, we're all free to believe anything that we want, and we don't necessarily have to have a reason for our own personal beliefs. At any time that you want to state that I believe anything, you're welcome to do that. And Venom Fang X, one of the guys on YouTube once upon a time, complained that atheists were prohibiting him from saying that maybe there's a God. And I don't disagree with that. Go ahead, say so. I'll even say it with you. Maybe there is. The problem with assertions of that kind is when you drop the word maybe. When you state as fact that which is merely a personal speculation, that is something that I can only define as dishonest. You can't say that there is something until you can justify that comment. If you can't justify that comment, you're welcome to say that you believe that, but you have to preface the assertion with the words, I believe, and then I have nothing to argue with you about it.
And I'm mostly on exactly the same page. My thing is that when we're talking about the actions taken by some science organizations that we're labeling accommodationist, to say that there's no conflict, I think that claiming that there's no conflict is an assertion that's not necessarily true. It's true in some cases. It's true in many cases.
Let's say that there needn't be a conflict.
Yes, there's and you said that when you answered that there's not necessarily a conflict. Instead, what I think we're seeing is in areas where there's clearly a conflict, where some religious organization or some theistic movement is asserting that they have some answer that is in direct opposition to the scientific evidence. I think there are people who are willing to just say, we all have our own views about how things. No, I'm sorry, I can't buy that at all. You're entitled to have whatever view you want.
No,
but your view doesn't have any bearing on what's real.
I think the ideal religious belief would be to assume that there is some force beyond what we understand. Okay, fine, I accept. There's definitely things beyond what we understand. We don't know everything. Granted, I'll accept that too. When you want to assert then that all the science that we know and all the facts that we can show are actually wrong because your particular favorite interpretation of whichever fable you most like. I think that's where the problem comes in, is where it becomes dogmatic. You're defending a story against the disproof of the story. Now, it doesn't disprove God. You have to understand that whether God exists or not is irrelevant. I mean, we are still evolving apes, and the stories detailed in Genesis are still false either way. And your God's existence does not change that.
Yep. And the second half of Jason's question was our opinion on atheism versus antitheism. And I guess it depends in part how you would normally define it. I often label myself as an antitheist. I'm an atheist, and I'm also an antitheist. It's not a mutually exclusive thing. And when I say that, I mean that by and large, I find theism to be divisive, harmful, and false. And therefore, I stand in opposition to that. I don't necessarily assert anything approaching absolute certainty that every theistic claim is necessarily false, or that these claims are of an impossible nature, although some of them, I would say, are of an impossible nature, the same like a square circle.
In one of my videos, I did a discussion about Godzilla. All right, what if we propose that Godzilla exists? We just say that he exists. We come out and say Godzilla exists. Is that an honest statement? We don't have any evidence to back it up. We have substantial evidence to go against it.
It's not honest.
It's not an honest statement. So how is it an honest statement to say there's a God? You can't prove Godzilla doesn't exist. You can look everywhere. You haven't looked everywhere yet. There's someplace in the Marianas Trench there might be a Godzilla. You can't, But if it's dishonest to state that anything else exists for which there is no supportive evidence, and why is it not dishonest to say that God exists? Same thing. I'm sorry. I'm sidetracking.
No. It's a better way of phrasing the same thing I was saying. I think, Jason, did that get to both your questions?
Yeah, that was sufficient. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks a lot for calling. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye. We have, we'll try Magic again. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Wow. We hear you now.
Yeah. Okay, English is my question. Is atheism against Christianity or just against all religions?
Okay, it's not against any religion, actually. There are actually atheist religions. Buddhism is often one good example of that. Taoism, pantheism of various forms, shaman beliefs, they're all religions that also happen to be atheist. Atheist does not mean that you reject the possibility of a God. I have to assist a number of people in this quite often. They often think that people will sometimes brand themselves as agnostics because they are unsure whether a God exists or not. That's all of us. An agnostic, to my understanding, is someone who actually does believe that there's a God, but believes that the nature of that God is beyond human comprehension. An atheist is somebody who has said that if there is a God, then our knowledge of it would be beyond human comprehension, but we don't actually believe there is one. The only thing that defines an atheist is that you are not convinced that there must be a God. If you're not convinced of this, if your worldview does not happen to include a God, and you have to define what that is, then you are atheist. Now, what he was saying before about anti-theists may be another realm. I mean, when you talk about how religions promote their specific agenda and their particular God and what he hates and who he hates and what he wants you to do to the people that he hates, that's where you get into his motivation for anti-theism. I think I'm speaking for you, and I probably shouldn't. But did that clarify? We're not against religion necessarily, although being a rationalist, which is a subset of atheists, because there's many different types, as I just illustrated, as a rationalist, an empirical rationalist like myself, I consider it dishonest to assert as fact what is not supported. And religions, of course, do that. They insist that you make positive assertions that aren't based on anything, that you state as fact what are mere speculations. We don't. We don't. Go ahead.
I got something else to ask. Okay. Why is religion the cause of most of the problems in the world today? Like September 11 and so on. Can you blame religion for that?
Mm-hmm. Did you hear that question?
You're asking religions cause problems, and you referred to September 11th as an example?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's always been that way. I mean, you have something where you need the people to believe in order to establish power, in order to hold position in religion, in order to have sway over other people. You have to have them believe what it is that you're selling, and that's why you require faith. Now, to me, the only thing in the universe that really requires faith is a bad salesman, because it requires that you absolutely swallow whatever I'm telling you. You have to believe it completely. I have to condition you that you realize that doubt is somehow evil, that gullibility is praised, and that if you ever second guess anything that I'm trying to tell you, that's somehow bad. You have to be conditioned to think like that. And then when you're afraid of your own thoughts, wherever they may vary from what I'm telling you is permitted to believe, then I've succeeded in establishing a religion. And religions work on humans' emotions, and they work on fear. Prejudice and paranoia are the cornerstones of many religious beliefs.
To steal something that Dennis pointed out yesterday on nonprofits, happy birthday, by the way. It's not that atheism is selling another form of religion. We're not buying what the religions are selling. If anything, rational, scientific, skeptical, secular atheists are like the consumer watchdogs that are pointing out, hey, the stuff that they're trying to sell you, probably not true. Let's look at the evidence on this. Are their claims actually supported? And for my money, the answer has been so far no, for almost every single one. Anything that was of significance to the religion itself. Religions can claim any number of true things. I mean, it's like when people point to the Bible and say, well, look, those places in the Bible existed. Well, yeah, New York existed, but that doesn't mean Spider-Man's real.
And atheism isn't even trying to promote atheism.
Yeah.
We're really not. I mean, what would the world be like if we were all atheists? I mean, would you know, hi, I'm an atheist, well, so am I. I mean, big damn deal. I mean, we're talking about a position or a philosophy that would negate itself to the extent that anybody would say, hi, I don't believe in gods. Well, coincidentally, I also don't believe impossible nonsense for no good reason and still maintain and defend those beliefs against all evidence to the contrary.
Yeah, to the extent that we're promoting anything, we're promoting science, skepticism, reason, critical thinking, those types of things.
Yeah. One thing I would say is, if you say that if the world was everyone was atheist, then I would believe the world will go straight to hell, as in no chaos everywhere. Because one thing
I'm not understanding you. Can you say that again?
Yeah. If the world was atheist and everyone was atheist, I believe there would be a lot of chaos. Because
you believe there'd be a lot of chaos?
Yeah, because one thing I believe is that if religion makes people fear, it restricts people. It makes people do things sensibly.
If that were the case, then why would all the statistics indicate the very opposite answer? I mean, have you ever done any comparisons? I mean, on any crime you like. I mean, if you look at the prison populations, I mean, there's been some reports shown with they have the statistics illustrated for all the different religious denominations and how they're represented in federal prison versus the populations that are seen out on the streets. I mean, atheists rather, in the prison population are substantially fewer than they are in the free world, whereas when you look at the Catholics and Protestants in general, you get roughly comparable numbers to what they are in the free world. They're the same percentages in the free population versus in prisons. But when you get into certain subgroups like atheists, and I think the one exception probably is Mormons, that are just about as low in the prison population as atheists are, everybody else doesn't seem to be at all encumbered by the fear of any God. I mean, find anybody that went to federal prison that doesn't have a cross tattooed on him or didn't before he went in. I mean, like I said in another video, I mean, I've met several people who were very good, wholesome people, and they happened to be Christian, and they were good, wholesome people before they were Christian, so that had no effect on them. But the population that you're talking about is not in any way restricted by their fear of God. I mean, you can talk to them and figure out what their rationale is behind the crimes. They believe there's a God. Somehow they don't believe that what they're doing is being, is something he's immediately looking at. I don't know what exceptions they draw for him, but they're not afraid for what they're doing. They don't think that this God is going to visit anything against them. And the atheists aren't going out and doing the things that you would expect atheists to do. If the reason that we're atheists is because we want to go out and sin, well, then why aren't we?
Well, I would say that by some people's definitions of sin, we are and enjoying it. But the thing that I wanted to get to is that the claim that religion benefits society is, in my opinion, what Dan Dennett refers to as a deepity, which means to the extent that it's true, it's trivial, and to the extent that it's profound, it is false. So when you say religion benefits society, okay, yeah, that's the portion of that that's true is entirely trivial. It provides a sense of community. It provides all of those things which are true don't require religion. They are things that humans have imbued religion with because this is human nature. The profound aspect of that statement that you're trying to make is demonstrably false. The claim that without religion the world would sink into chaos and that there would be no moral standards and people would just rape and pillage. It's absurd.
If you're interested in the specific statistics, the video that I showed all these in was called Answering Cess Streets, and it's in one of my upload sections. I pulled a number of statistics out of mainstream media. It's all easily verifiable. You can look up any of these statistics yourself. All of them invariably show the direct opposite correlation. It is a negative correlation, what you're talking about. Religion does not maintain social order, and in every example that I can think of, does the very reverse.
Okay. So what do atheists follow as morals? What guidelines do they follow to live? Like Christians who believe you shouldn't tell a lie, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. What do atheists believe? How do you
go about, how do atheists go about forming a moral code without, some dogmatic ancient book to tell us what to do?
And it's worse than that. You're telling me that the only reason that people that should be nice to each other is because they're afraid of some inescapable sky daddy with an inevitable punishment. Is that what you're saying? That if we don't fear this indomitable beast coming after us, that we've no reason to be nice to each other. Is that the question?
That's not really exactly what I'm saying.
Okay.
I understand what you're saying. But
it's really, I've talked about this before, and actually, if you'll bear with me for a moment, I'm going to do a slight bit of self-promotion. March 24th, I'll be at Washington State University Pullman, and the subject of the talk will be the superiority of secular morality. And I'll be going through this in great detail. I'm sure that somebody's going to videotape it. Tape. I dated myself. I'm sure that it will be recorded and probably available for viewing. But the thing is, I think people get too hung up on this question of morals, and it's much, much simpler than anybody would suspect. The fact that we're all similar creatures with similar goals, similar values in the simplistic sense of life is generally preferable to death and health is generally preferable to sickness, that type of thing. It's not difficult at all.
I can give you
in a cooperative society to come up with which actions are beneficial to myself and the group and which are harmful. I mean, it's obvious. It doesn't even take a great deal of thought for most of them.
What I typically see occurring in people that were once devout believers is when they come to the point where they realize that at some point they had been lied to by people who knew, in fact, that they were lying, and they begin to re-examine their religious beliefs, and they begin to decide that they're all bogus. It's not what a believer would generally suspect. It's not that they want to rebel. It certainly isn't that they hate God, because, I mean, how can you hate something that you don't believe exists? But in each of these people, in every case of anyone that I've actually spoken to, in every case that I know of directly, when someone comes to the reality of viewing the world without a deity behind it, where natural things happen for natural reasons and things make sense, then their appreciation for science and nature and understanding and even truth is enhanced. I cannot think of one person who has eventually rejected or denied or shrugged off religious beliefs who does not feel at great benefit from that. And they all think that, look at how much of my life I've wasted wandering around in the dark.
Okay. I have more personal questions to ask. Okay. I'm a 17-year-old college student, and I don't really know what to believe in.
That's a good position to stay on.
Yeah.
I'd say it's a good starting point, for sure. You're better off than if you believed something that you had no good reason to. Go out, explore, think about it, investigate different things. I'm convinced, as are most of the people that I associate with and you'll find on the show, that there is a tool set that allows us to figure out which claims are true and which claims are not true.
Now, one of the things is if you're concerned about whether or not your belief in anything in the Bible is true, read it. I encourage you. Read the entire thing. And if that alone doesn't do it for you, then start looking at other religious documents. Seriously and sincerely, read the Quran, read the Bhagavad Gita, read the Avestas of Zarathustra. Compare various religions. And then maybe your horizons will expand a bit. It did for me.
But on the question of morals, I definitely, if I were you, I'd stop by perhaps the Iron Chariots Wiki or even Wikipedia, or do a search for the Euthyphro dilemma, which will kind of address what you were talking about before. In simplest terms, it asks the question, is something moral because a God commands it, or does a God command it because it's moral? And the idea that you need an externally enforced, externally dictated moral code to tell you what's right and wrong is one that I find not only absurd but offensive.
In your first statement about it was this guy that said that if everybody was atheist, there would be chaos. Mm-hmm. It was his caller, yes, okay. I mean, I envision if everybody was atheist, I mean, it'd be kind of like a Star Trek sort of a universe wherein your believers would be a very small sect of people, and they would say, hi, I believe things that are absolutely impossible. I believe them for no reason whatsoever, and I absolutely will not change my mind no matter what reason you give me. This, I think, is a more realistic comparison. The laws apply whether you believe or not. You're going to be punished if you commit crimes, whether you believe or not. And then it just becomes that you don't have the fan base of other supporters to say, oh, we also believe ridiculous and indefensible nonsense. It becomes more obviously indefensible when you're out there alone.
Magic, we got full lines. I appreciate the calls and the questions. I'm going to go ahead and move on to some other people, but thanks a lot for calling in.
Thank you.
Cheers. We've got Dave in Washington.
Hey, guys.
Hey, you had a question for Aron?
Yeah. Well, first, Matt, I wanted to thank you for you talking about lost Christianities. I just bought that book and started reading it here. pretty interesting so far. But yeah, for your guest here, Aron. Aron? Oh, apologies.
Nobody says it right. It's all right.
I got it wrong. That's why I'm correcting everybody.
I was wondering what has been your experience on YouTube as far as intellectual debates go? I wouldn't think that would be a great source of conversation.
I'm not sure I follow your question. You may want to paraphrase after you hear my answer. As far as intellectual conversation, I take that to mean that once I've given my position in my videos, that I have other people that are logging on into the discussion boards, and they give me counter positions or maybe points to ponder or something like that. And you're asking my feedback on the sort of intellectual discussions that follow on that. Is that the question?
Yeah, that's a good paraphrase. Just kind of how the comments have been coming back.
Okay.
I mean, I read YouTube comments, and it's garbage.
Yeah, and that's my answer too. I mean, I did one video wherein I refused to make anybody else famous, just for, when somebody asks me a stupid question and I make a video to address that, and now I've elevated that person's status, like what happened with the taxi driver, who became something of a stalker of mine for a bit. What I did in the last video addressed to him was to put out a challenge for theists to come up with somebody that they would say represents their beliefs, and have that person, I don't care who it is, I just want to see a nomination, and I want to see a number of people back that person so that we have a substantial voter block, say this guy represents us, and then have that person debate me in some moderated format somewhere. Because until that happens, and possibly even after that, I have yet to see an intellectual debate, either in YouTube or on Talk.Origins or in any live avenue anywhere ever. I don't think it's possible to have one.
Yeah, and we get email about the show from theists who think that we're handpicking callers. Because, I see the calls you guys take, and those guys are stupid, and they make the worst arguments, and why you guys are afraid to debate the true, intellectual powerhouses of, creationism and Christianity and Islam and whatever else you want to toss in there. No, we're not. The only thing that we're screening against is crank calls and people who just want to call and say, hey, great show.
I have an open invitation to debate Ray Comfort. I will not be anywhere near
No. He doesn't have an open invitation to debate Ray because I have an open invitation to debate Ray.
All right, well, we'll bring in Kirk Cameron and we'll have a two-man tag team.
It would take half of one of us to show up drunk.
As a minor point here, are the rumors of the Texas Board of Education true?
Yes. I don't even have to wonder what the rumors are.
If the rumors are negative, yeah.
Yeah, I've heard Thomas Jefferson being thrown out. They're rewriting.
What they want to do is they want children to be taught that that the United States was some sort of religious oasis. They want to throw out completely the point of this country. The United States may have been colonized by people who were fleeing religious persecution in other countries, but when they got here, they persecuted each other in similar fashion. I mean, with early Protestants and Quakers and Puritans were all at war with each other, lopping off each other's ears, torturing each other in the streets. And what happened when the United States government began to be erected was they started looking at how in France, in recent history at that time, you had Catholics hunting Protestants en masse by orders of the government. And in England, again, you had Protestants hunting Catholics for the same reason. It was an order, a law of the land. And so when they set up the United States, it was supposed to be the world's first secular government. It was supposed to preserve freedom of religion. And now many Christians will tell me that freedom of religion means freedom of Christian religion, but no, it doesn't. Because I can point out that Mormons are a Christian religion. They are the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and in the United States, after the foundation of our government, we had a law passed, I don't remember if it was Illinois or if it was in Missouri, but it had federal marshals hunting down whole families of Mormons and shooting them in the streets. This is what the Founding Fathers expected would be happening if you didn't prevent the government from being intertwined with religion. Freedom of religion, by necessity, demands freedom from religion. It means putting the reins on religion, and it means that the government cannot promote or endorse any one religion over any other. And that's one of the things that the Board of Education wants to specifically exclude from the lesson plan. They don't want children to know that the government is prohibited from promoting Christianity over Islam or Hinduism or anything else.
There's a member of the school board whose name escapes me at the moment who explicitly said just recently that the idea of church-state separation is fictional, and he's offered to donate $1,000 to the charity of your choice if you can find it in the Constitution. And this is the sort of, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, so if you haven't listened to Nonprofits, you can go back. I won't reiterate all of it. It's the sort of word games that go on, and as Russell pointed out, the word Trinity doesn't exist in the New Testament either. It's a concept that has grown out of what was explicitly stated in the First Amendment, that the government shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or preventing the free exercise thereof. Well, those words don't say church-state separation, but that's what they mean.
And how do we know that that's what they mean? Because Thomas Jefferson, another person we're not allowed to discuss anymore, it would seem, clarified that point. He's the one that wrote that there should be a wall of separation between church and state. He specified this is exactly what he meant by that passage, so there can be no ambiguity here.
And he's not alone. There are quotes from the other founding fathers, and Madison said that the only valid, I'm going to get the quote wrong, but the only valid interaction government should have with religion is in settling disputes of a legal nature between religions. Even if Thomas Jefferson had never written that quote about church-state separation, this is the practical application of what the First Amendment must mean. It has to mean that, because anything else renders it meaningless and moot.
I put further clarification on this point in a video titled "The Fifth Foundational Falsehood of Creationism."
Okay, I'll have to look that up.
Okay.
Yeah, I hope something can, I don't know what can be done, the ACLU with the ACA, but hopefully something can be competed against this.
I would like to see a revision of this plan wherein we take the least credible people possible and put them in these positions of power and then have their decisions irrevocable for a decade. That doesn't make any sense, especially when it indirectly affects the rest of the country, because whatever decision some willfully ignorant dentist in Texas makes then establishes what the educational criteria for children in Maine or Vermont or Washington have to endure.
And I've been asked, I'll go ahead and let you go, Dave. Thanks a lot for the call.
All right, thanks.
I've been asked before, what's my position on churches' tax-exempt status? And for me, it's really simple. They should be taxed.
Yes.
They absolutely. And there's one very simple reason for it, and that is it puts the government in the position of sanctioning religions. Because when you go to apply for the tax-exempt status, if you're a recognized religion, you just get it. It's done. It's, okay, you're one of the recognized religions. If you're not one of the recognized religions, then you have to make a demonstration that you should be, which means the government is now in the business of determining which religions should be sanctioned and therefore get a tax exemption, and which shouldn't. And that is the clearest violation of the First Amendment that I've ever seen. I have no problem at all with churches qualifying for tax exemptions in the way that any other nonprofit organization would, by having open books, by demonstrating that they are performing a valuable service in the public good. They can qualify as a charity, etc. They may have to keep that organization separate from the religious organization, but I'm not discriminating against religions. They can still apply for tax-exempt status, but giving it to them as a de facto, you're a Baptist church and we've sanctioned Baptists, so you get your tax exemption, that's a violation of the First Amendment, and it may never be rectified, or it may not be rectified in my lifetime, but it's something that should be. It's an appalling abuse of the system. We've got Shelley in Hinsdale.
Yep, that's me.
How are you, Shelley?
Not too bad. I just wanted to make a quick point. I'm an agnostic theist. That's kind of weird. It's like an echo. That religion needs to stay out of science class and politics. and science is shown to be foolish, and in politics it generally makes dictators. Faith should be a matter of the heart. If you're going to be religious, then you should stay away from dogmatic teachings because they cloud your mind. They make you go bomb buildings. And trying to justify faith with science is also ridiculous because by its very definition, God would actually be outside of the universe, so science can never prove it.
Okay.
Yeah, I concur. No argument.
Oh, and one more thing before I go.
Mm-hmm. If you say Baba Booey, I'll laugh.
No, DPR and Kirk 420 say hey.
Oh! We were going to play Kirk's song today, but the audio quality, I used it yesterday, the audio quality on it was just too low, and so I amplified it, and I forgot to bring the amplified version today. But I'll do it again on another day.
Kirk has a good impersonation video of Aron Ra you should show sometime.
All right.
No,
Thanks a lot for the call, Shelley.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
All right, so we got open lines and telephone numbers up on the screen. There's about 45 minutes left in the show. Evidently, we weren't getting the... I don't know what happened with the screened out call. Some people were waiting. So if you've been patiently waiting and then gave up, you can actually call in because it's cleared out.
Well, she mentioned DPR, and we do have a question from him. So if we don't have a call in at the moment, we should probably address that.
We can definitely do that. As a reminder, after the show's over, we get together and go to dinner at Threadgill's on Riverside. The show's on until 6 o'clock. We'll be down there around 6:30 or so. Please, you're welcome to come down and join us. These questions were sent in via email, and the phone's already lighting up, so we'll get to them quick.
Okay.
For you, Aron, if evolution explains the origins of our morality, does that mean that our morality is hardwired into us? If so, does that imply that morality can, to an extent, be considered objective? And if that's correct, to what extent can social pressures or norms affect our morality?
Okay. Well, I'd intend to explore this a little bit more in depth, but we have calls coming in. So,
It'll take a while before they get queued.
As far as whether morality is hardwired into us, I think it's an easily verifiable fact that empathy is largely hardwired into us, or at least most of us. But the problem with it being objective is that variety happens in any population, and there are going to be deviant behaviors. In some degree, all of us exhibit deviant behaviors, probably in every possible direction. So I can't say that anything is hardwired. What is hardwired today, or what seems to be dominant in the population, might completely change if the factors change sufficient to make it so. Now, the next question was that he asked in there. What was the other one?
Whether that was objective, and if it was, to what extent does social pressures and norms affect it?
Okay, well then I think we're done with that one. Go on to yours.
You sent one in for me as well. There are still some that argue that the Bible is the source of our morality. They're wrong. It may be the source of their morality, but not our morality. When it's pointed out to these people that the hideous moral code contained in the Old Testament, particularly Leviticus and Deuteronomy, they claim that that all changed with Jesus' death and that the New Testament contains an updated moral code. Obviously, this proposition ignores the Ten Commandments still apply and that it's the same God. Also, there's nothing in the Bible to indicate that God has changed his mind, and of course, there's Matthew 5:17 and 18. Could you comment on the idea that Jesus changed the divine moral code and that the code is contained in the New Testament? This gets back to but that's the Old Testament argument, which comes up all the time in both email and on the show. It's people who have, Christians in particular, who have finally come to an intellectual realization that, yeah, there is some gruesome, objectionable, outright offensive, and immoral acts and instructions in the Old Testament. It sanctions slavery explicitly. Who you can enslave, how much you pay for them, how long you can keep them, how to get around the rules for only keeping Jews as slaves for 6 years. It's
how old they can be and under what conditions you can marry them.
Yeah, it's not to mention all of the killing goes on. So these people come to this realization, okay, so I'd rather not have to deal with those objections in the Old Testament. So Jesus came and everything got better. Well, that's not really an accurate representation of the New Testament. First of all, if you chuck out the Old Testament, you chuck out every bit of anything that made the New Testament relevant. You no longer have anything that you can point to that you could have claimed as prophecy, even though we can dispute all day as to whether any of that was prophecy or whether or not it was accurate. But you get rid of, as you pointed out, the Ten Commandments. You get rid of Moses, who is referred to more in the in the New Testament than anybody except Jesus, I think. The traditional Christian Orthodox thing is that our claim is that Jesus didn't circumvent the law. He fulfilled the sacrificial law, which was, he became the ultimate sacrifice. And so it was only those sacrificial laws that he supposedly eliminated, which means that everything else of the 613 commandments that would apply to Jews, etc., are still in there. I tend to find it incredibly dishonest. And the biggest reason is one that you pointed out. You're talking about the same God. You're talking about, and they'll profess all day long, it's the same one. You lose your creation story when you chuck out the Old Testament as well. And if you have the same God, please tell me what was wrong with him in the first go-round. Did he get better?
I'm also curious, if we absolutely have to stick with the Ten Commandments as being the sole source of morality, then, we have one list in Exodus 20, we have another one in Exodus 34, and only the first two are repeated in both sets, and only the second set is actually referred to by the Bible as the Ten Commandments. So can you tell me a yes or no question? Are you required to observe the Feast of the Unleavened Bread? And are you prohibited from boiling a baby goat in its own mother's milk?
Not only that, but I'd argue that the New Testament is not an improvement. Yeah, it's not right. It's got nice things in there, about turning the other cheek and trying to forgive people. It's got tons of bad advice. As a matter of fact, if you go over to the wiki at ironchariots.org, you can find my deconstruction of the entire Sermon on the Mount there. But the New Testament is where we get this incredibly offensive idea of eternal punishment for finite crimes. That doesn't exist in Judaism because it's not a prevalent theme in the Old Testament or the Jewish Bible.
And if I can go on about this one more time, a lot of Christians will have this problem where they say that you have to observe the Ten Commandments in order to determine whether or not you're going to get into heaven, but the criteria is not that. What was laid out by Jesus, according to the New Testament, was literally gullibility. You have to believe. A defiance of the very first commandment, thou shalt have no other gods before me. In Isaiah, I think it's 45, 5, 6, and 7, God describes himself and says that there's not anyone beside him. And then Jesus says that I sit on the right hand of power. Right? God says in the first commandment, thou shalt have no other gods before me. And then Jesus comes along and says the only way to get through God is through me. So he requires...
There's a reason why Jews rejected all of this.
So Jesus is requiring you to break the very first commandment, and then the criteria, the only criteria, because works are like filthy rags in some interpretations of this, the only criteria to get into heaven is to believe whatever the priests are selling you. And that's it. Works don't matter. Works don't count. Blind, unquestioning gullibility is the only thing that's going to get you into heaven, because it does not matter how wonderful you are. If you didn't believe that Jesus was your Savior, then Jesus himself is going to be running you through the winepress of sinners, as he describes in Revelations. Jesus is doing the punishing here. And he's punishing only those who don't believe him, only because they don't believe him. It does not matter what else you do. So all these people that tell me that, this is the moral high ground, no, it's not. It's not remotely.
Yeah, your idea of the transition between the Old Testament and the New Testament, yeah, your God got better about a few things. He's not running around telling everybody to kill the opposition.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, when these people say that the Bible admonishes homosexuality, for example, homosexuality is a sin, and is it not the same chapter that also says that you're forbidden to eat shellfish, that it's an equal crime? Well, how can people sit there in this moral high ground at Red Lobster and bash on the homosexuals? Sorry, it's a hypocrisy.
Yep, absolutely. We're going to try and get through some more calls now. We got them queued up. We've got Ed. No, we don't. We don't have Ed. We had Ed in Austin, who had asked, have you heard about the recent discovery that the pyramids were built by paid laborers and not slaves? No, I hadn't heard that. He said, and not slaves as the Bible claimed. Not only have I not heard that, it doesn't matter because the Bible doesn't mention pyramids at all. It does hold that the Israelites were enslaved in Egypt. It doesn't say that they built the pyramids. However, modern archaeological evidence has pretty much demonstrated that that's just not true. They never were slaves in
And even if
Egypt.
it was true that they were slaves in Egypt, I mean, we have the what was it, the ninth commandment, Timothy, I can't remember which one it was now, that thou shalt not steal, right? And then you've got Exodus, where it's telling the Jews to borrow from their neighbors money and goods and livestock, and we'll bring them back in 40 years.
Yeah. It's payment for those years that you didn't actually enslave us. But anyway, we've got, is it Daron or Daron?
Yes, hi.
How are you in Toronto?
Hi. Yes. My mic is actually not very good, so I'm going to ask my question quick and then get out of here.
Okay.
It's a question for Aron. I've noticed that over time, increasingly I find that the creationists like to, whenever evolution comes up, just kind of skip over the whole deal and say, cut right to the, well, where did life come from? And so what I thought would just be interesting, I was just wondering was, I was listening to something with Neil deGrasse Tyson saying that they'd narrowed it down to about 100,000 years where abiogenesis would have needed to occur, or where God snapped his fingers, whatever viewpoint you want to take. I was just wondering how, because we talk a lot about, and Aron talks a lot about kind of gaps in the fossil record, quote unquote, how close have we gotten back to that? Like, I realize that it's very full up after a certain point, but how close after the theoretical abiogenesis event do we actually have records and fossils and direct evidence of life?
Okay, thanks.
I believe stromatolites are the oldest verifiable fossils that we have, and they are on the range of, I think, 3.5 billion years. When you're talking about microorganisms, it's very difficult to find fossils for these. You could have seas full of them, and they just don't fossilize except on very precise conditions. They're soft-bodied, they're microscopic, and it's just hard to determine.
Yeah, your paraphrased question that they sent to us, though, about the evidence for abiogenesis, that's kind of a separate issue. It's not that how close to the abiogenic event we have fossil evidence really doesn't have anything to do with whether or not we have evidence for that event, or however many events there may have been.
I think it whittles down to this. I mean, we all believe that life came from non-life at one point. We believe that it happened naturally. They believe that it happened magically. And what we have as circumstantial evidence of that is as we go down through the fossil record, things become more and more simplified and more generalized until we get down to where we have a billion years or so in which there are only microbes anywhere on the planet. And the creationists, of course, would say that we had cows and kittens and bunnies all appear abruptly at the same time. And none of these appear until, the last couple million years at best.
We've got Rick in Austin. I love the fact that his name was Rick. The question, though, which he used to be able to rickroll us, was if there is no God, what happens to all the souls when they die? And of course, the quick and easy answer is what souls? But so thanks for that. Great song, by the way. Is it Sean or Swain in Leesville? Sean?
Sean.
They might have typoed it for me. How you doing?
I'm good.
You might want to turn off the stream, because if I'm hearing an echo, and if you're concentrating on that, we're going to have this delay thing going that we'll never resolve.
Okay.
You had a question?
Yes, I do.
Okay, go ahead.
My question is, between the Big Bang and God created Earth, I wonder if the whole thing happened at the same time, or what?
You talking about the biblical description?
Okay. Let me rephrase my question because I keep getting interrupted by the echo, and I'm really, really far away from everything. Okay. My question is, everyone keeps saying that the Big Bang has happened and that created Earth, and on the other end, I'm also hearing that God has created Earth and everything. And I was wondering if both of those happened at the same time and no one didn't realize it.
All right, well, if God created the universe and the method that he used was the Big Bang, how would you tell the difference?
Hello?
I'm here.
If God used evolution to create all the species, how would you know? How would you know if there was a God involved or not? Another way to address your question is to remind you that the Earth is dated somewhere around 4.3, 4.4 billion years old, I think it is, and the universe is right around 14 billion years old, so we have about a billion-year gap between what would be the Big Bang and the formation of the Earth in the solar system.
Okay.
I don't know if this is accurate. They put a summary of your question up where you were saying, is it possible that the Big Bang and the creation event that the Bible described both happened? I'd say that the answer to that is no. The biblical account of creation is demonstrably false. It is not in the same order of how we know things occurred. I mean, it has plants before the sun. It has the earth, in the beginning. That's not the case. As Aron just pointed out, the universe is about 14 billion years old and the Earth's about 4.5 billion years old. So obviously they weren't around the same time.
One very simple way to look at this is that you have to realize that the stories in Genesis are written from the perspective of someone who lives on the earth, has limited knowledge of the earth, and no knowledge whatsoever of anywhere else in the universe. Everything is geocentric in that perspective. And so, of course, the earth is like an infinite plane, and the stars, along with the sun and the moon, were all created at the same time, in the same breath. Somehow it took 4 days to create the earth, but 1 instant to create the sun, the moon, and the stars, and there's no recognition of the fact that the moon is just a body of rock much as we, or that the sun is just another star. The people who wrote those stories had no idea. They were people. And that's where the limitations are.
Yeah, the only kind of apologetic that goes along those lines, in order to distinguish what we're reading, for example, in the Bible or in any other supposed holy book, is that these people supposedly received their inspiration and their information through some divine psychic hotline to God. Well, not only is that something that is not supported by evidence, but either their God is just a bumbling buffoon who can't relay information effectively or didn't know what he was talking about, or they're just wrong. And there was no communication. Well, if there was no communication, then you don't have any book that tells you anything at all about any being that you might want to call a God. So you've got a big storybook. And, while there may be some cool stories in there, there's no reason for anybody, at least no reason that I can see, for anybody to base their understanding of reality and the universe and science and the world in which we live upon that book.
Living here in the United States, you are no doubt immersed in a thoroughly Christian society, and that's probably the only perspective that you're aware of. Any other religious perspective is going to be a smaller group, a subgroup, a cult, or something along those lines. But the reality is that while Christianity, all-inclusive, all 38,000 different denominations combined, do collectively account for the world's largest religion. Just after that, you've got Islam, and then after that, you've got Hinduism. And if we look at Hinduism for a moment, we're talking about 800 million people who have a completely independent view of religion, a totally different Godhead than anything that you're familiar with. I mean, if you were to read the Bhagavad Gita, in it, Lord Krishna describes how he created not just this earth, but many others. How he created not just this universe, but a multiverse. Now, this book was written centuries at least before the Bible was begun. The earliest archaeological evidence that you have of the Bible is maybe 300 BCE, and that's it. And the Bhagavad Gita was already complete centuries before that. Now, here's a religious perspective in which a man claims to be Krishna, which means Christ, effectively. We're talking about the same sort of individual. He talks about how he created the world. Now, if you were to read the Bhagavad Gita, and it were to strike you as truth, then I guess I don't have anything to say about this, but then what I would predict is that when you read the Bhagavad Gita, it will come across to you not as divine wisdom, not as revealed truth. I would think that you would read this ancient document, this sacred tome, and come away thinking that this was just a storybook and that it wasn't as divine or wise or moral as it was reputed to be. And once you read the Bhagavad Gita, if you were to come to that opinion of it, you would then have a very good idea, the perspective that I have, reviewing your Bible. Did we lose her?
I don't know.
No,
Okay.
I'm here.
Did you have any other question?
No, thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Sean.
Uh-huh.
We've got Gabriel in Columbus. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you guys doing?
It's all right.
Good.
It's all right.
I wanted to say, first of all, thanks a lot for getting yourselves together because, in my mind, you guys, Aron Ra and the host of the Atheist Experience are just intellectual powerhouses, and I'm so
Wonder
happy
Twin
you guys-
powers activate.
You're in the same place. Yeah. So on that note, I'm just wondering if you guys have any, recommended reading for your hosts, or for not your hosts, your audience. Matt, I've heard you mention a few books. I've got Innumeracy. I've read that, and I have Freedom Evolves on my shelf. I'm going to get to that soon. But I wonder if for both of you, if you guys have any recommended reading, and I'll take my call there. So thanks a lot.
All right.
Oh, well, I was going to ask on what subjects, because there's a broad range. I mean, when I'm talking about general skepticism and reason like that, Innumeracy and, more importantly, Demon Haunted World are the first two that I recommend. But if you're looking for something that specifically deals with Christianity or Christianity, church history, things like that, Bart Ehrman's got a couple of good books like Jesus Interrupted and Lost Christianities. Those are easily my two favorites. And then there's other books, in addition to Dennis' books on free will. He's got books on religion. Boy, the list is long. I don't know. You want to toss some in there?
I don't want to throw anything out there either. No, I read little bits of everything.
Yeah.
And as it's like you said, it's such a broad range that where do I start with? I'm going to start with Demon Haunted World, or I start with the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah. I'll tell you this, we get this question a lot, and part of me wants to put together like this, Matt's reading list, except that it would be incredibly short. I mean, I read lots of books. There's stacks of books at home. Some of them I've managed to get all the way through. Some of them I haven't. By and large, there are a handful of books that were really significant. Reading Hume's work was incredibly, and Voltaire and Ingersoll is probably my number one recommendation. They were all important, but as Aron just pointed out, I've gone through and I'm
got one
picking
book
in
to suggest.
bits and pieces of stuff, and I do a ton of my reading online, and I'll read 10 or 20 different things online, and then compare them and come to my own conclusions about,
I'd like to recommend reading Darwin and not The Origin of the Species. I would suggest that anybody who's interested in this controversy at all should read on The Voyage of the Beagle, which was written long before he had conceived or begun to understand evolution, because it gives his perspective on being a globetrotter, on going around the world in a day when slavery still existed in many places, and when all the people that want to accuse Darwin of being a racist or promoting racism or of being involved in eugenics at all of those illusions are going to dissipate rather quickly when you read the man's own words. He was adamantly against all of the things that are currently attributed to him by his detractors.
So while we're waiting for the next set of calls to queue up, I'll remind folks about dinner, because I never know if I remind enough or forget. But since we got a guest in town, and by the way, somebody should call Threadgills and let them know that hell's coming. But I was curious. For some of your videos, it's you sitting there talking and presenting your opinions just as you would on this show. Others are edited together with lots of images in a way that really paints the picture so that people can understand it. For a video like that that's, 5-10 minutes long, how much time do you spend putting that thing together?
Well, there was a lot of research that went into before I ever started the series, because I was posting online arguments a great deal of my time on Talk Toward Origins for about a decade before I started the series. I had already seen every counter argument, and so I knew if I make this presentation, I know what the counter argument is going to be. I have to counter the counter argument in the same presentation. So knowing in advance what they're all going to be, I show up the refutation in a slideshow while I'm talking. So it has to be overlapped layers of data. A lot of people say it's too compacted, but it's the only way that I can present it without it being dismissed offhand.
Right.
When the refutation is right there, well then you can't just slide it off that easily. So it would put me knowing in advance what the general idea was. I wrote out some scripts for all of the specific points I wanted to make. And then each individual video, I think, took me an average of 3 weeks to a month to put together. But it was at a time when I had a lot more time than I have now.
Yeah. We've got David in Leesville.
Hi, how you doing, Matt?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing fine. I was on a chat room, and I was debating with an apologist one day. And he had brought up morality. And he was saying that if morality doesn't come from an objective source like God, then there would have to be an instance with something like rape would be good. And I took an evolutionary approach to explain it, but I was wondering what response that Aron would give to that.
Well, if you're talking about the evolution of morality, I've already got a series of videos on that in my upload section. I recently went to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, to give the keynote speech on the Darwin Day celebration, hosted by the Florida Atheists and Secular Humanists and the Center for Free Inquiry and the James Randi Educational Foundation. It was a good trip, and I want to thank all of them while I'm here. As I don't know any other way to summarize what was about a 45-minute speech for the question, because I think it would be a very long answer otherwise. I would encourage you to look up those videos.
All right.
The shortest version I can get, just to the quick thing that you had about without an absolute morality, what's the basis for condemning bad things like rape? Because I think they're wrong. Just set aside everybody else. Me, on my own, I think they're wrong. And what's more, I think that I can demonstrate that you also think that they're wrong. And you can get into how you're going to go about demonstrating harm, etc. But ultimately, not only do I not need any external dictate about what is right and wrong, I don't care if there is one. You can dictate to me all day long what you think is wrong. It's not going to be right or wrong for me. And when we understand that we may have different views about this, that's what promotes the discussion to figuring out what views we should have among all of us.
Does the particular act that you're talking about legitimately involve a victim? Because I think that would be a simple answer. If we're trying to determine whether it's wrong, does it victimize someone? Does it, as he said, harm someone?
Yeah, when a theist, Christian in particular, is where this comes from quite often, says, if there is no divine moral authority, then you can't say that rape is wrong. I look at them befuddled. Seriously.
No, I look at them befuddled because the Bible promotes this. I mean, these are the same people that go on about abortion. I mean, have you read Numbers 5? The Bible promotes abortion, and not just the Bible. There's a number of peripheral laws or books of Jewish law, like the Talmud, for example, that go into specific detail on how to perform a partial birth abortion, for example. The Bible has many examples of where it admonishes rape and as we said before, slavery, and the rape and slavery of children in one instance, depending on your interpretation. So when these people talk about their absolute moral code and they say it's the Bible, well, I find that a little abhorrent.
Yeah, and my big thing is that if you need an external moral source to tell you that rape, for example, is wrong, you got bigger problems than sitting around contemplating where morality comes from.
And as I said earlier in the show, almost all of the rapists in prison, statistically at least, believed in God before they committed their crime.
So that's about the best we're going to do, David. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye. We have Justin in Montreal.
Hi, guys.
Hey.
Hey, so I just had a little question to ask you guys. Oh, I got that echo. I was watching Fox News a long time ago, and I was kind of frightened when I was seeing some protesters talking about Proposition 8 back when that was going down. And it was really frightening because they weren't a bunch of angry people. They were just nice elderly couple. They were happy. They were very happy about what they were doing. And I just thought that they had a very twisted view of things. That the worldview had been really skewed by what they were told by whoever. I was wondering what you guys thought about the potential for faith to do harm just by changing the way people perceive things.
I know from other things I've seen on this show that Matt has a similar perspective in that we both know people who, in most senses, would be good, upright, decent people who believe that they are being good and moral and upright and decent. And when you try to get them to understand how it is that casting laws against a whole demographic of people is infringing on their rights and is therefore wrong, as we mentioned before, whether there's a victim or not, they can't conflict one belief in favor of the reality of that situation. They simply can't do it. And it's difficult when you love and care about somebody and you see them in this position. It's hard to press the point to get them to understand when they believe what they believe because it's been so ingrained into them that they don't know how to question that anymore.
Yeah, I can't personally think of anything other than religion and things that perhaps might qualify as a religion in the same sense that could get a parent to actually despise their child. That's the kind of, it doesn't happen in every case. Some people manage to escape. But if you're ever going to convince a parent to hate their own child, you need something like religion.
Yes, and of course we have people like the American Family Association, people who promote biblical morality, right? And they're centered on the family. They often do this. However, looking at the Bible again, we have Jesus saying that he's going to divide husbands from wives, and he's going to divide children from parents, and that you need to be ready to tear apart from all of your relationships in favor of him. So again, it's like the moral high ground thing. I don't see it. When it comes from the Bible, it seems just a contradiction. It isn't really there.
Justin, you there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
I had to put you on hold because of the echo, but thanks.
Yeah, that's no problem. Yeah, it reminds me exactly of a quote from Christopher Hitchens. I can't remember exactly how it goes, but it's pretty much that it takes religion to make a good man do something bad, but not the other way around. It just
that might actually
to make a good man do bad things requires religion.
Yeah, and there's a quote from Weinberg that's like that too, where without religion, good people will do good things, and bad people will do bad things, etc.
And if you believe absurdities, you will commit atrocities.
And that's Voltaire.
Yeah, that's the main point. I think that you can make people believe the worst things, and it's Voltaire right up.
Yep.
Well, thank you, guys.
Thanks. One of the things that I've done a few times is for people who want to call the Bible the good book or talk about how wonderful their Bible is okay, you think it's a good book and you think it has valuable information in it from a God that everybody should know, then please sit me down in a room with your child and allow me to read them stories of my choosing from your book. Nobody takes me up on it. And it's a good thing because I would have to decline because I care more about their kids and have more respect for their kids than they do. I would never put them in that position. It's strictly there to make a point. I have no interest in doing it. The fact that nobody's taking me up on it tells me that either nobody's heard it, maybe you haven't heard my little offer, but I think most of them realize that there are things in there that just aren't that good. What they need to start realizing is that it's not that there are things in there that just aren't that good, there's not many things in there that are good.
Yeah, and when people talk about the Bible being a moral guide, there are so many hypothetical situations I can show wherein if the Bible indicates anything at all, it is absolutely the wrong answer according to every social standard or law we have in this country.
We've got Adrian in Orlando.
Hi, this is Adrian.
Hey, how are you?
Pretty good.
Thanks for calling and waiting.
Oh, thank you. No problem. I know that you, Matt, really dislike when people say that they think trees prove God. So I wanted to tell you how trees made me become an atheist.
All right, go for it.
I had a friend that at the time I was sort of a super agnostic, the ones that say you can't possibly know, and kind of a pantheist. And a friend asked me if I thought trees had souls. So I thought about what a soul was, memories and emotions and moral judgments and all that good stuff. And I realized that I already knew that all of that was functions of the brain. And if you alter brain chemistry or brain structure, you change that part of the person's personality. And so trees couldn't have souls because they don't have brain, and so it didn't make any sense for humans to have souls if their brains disintegrate after death. And that's kind of when I stopped believing anything spiritual.
I never attached a soul to a brain. In my perspective, when I still believed in a sort of a life force, something rather similar to what the Jedi believe in. I think that was actually my religion for about 15 years or so. I envisioned that heaven that's occupied only by human beings is going to be a very boring place. It wasn't realistic, even from a theistic perspective. From my perspective, it always has been that if humans have a soul, then so does grass, and so do hamsters, and so does green algae.
Well, for me, it was everything that's associated with the soul usually has to do with parts of the personality. Because if none of your personality goes on after death, then what's the point of your soul living? It's just nothing.
Yeah, and somebody raised a point in email the other day which reminded me of a discussion that we'd had before. And I'll go ahead and let you go on this, but thanks a lot for calling, Adrian.
Okay, thank you.
For the theists out there, the Christians in particular, who think that they're going to go to heaven when they die, if you have family members or children and loved ones who don't believe as you do, and you are convinced that they are then going to spend eternity or perhaps some really long time in hell, what's it going to be like for you in heaven? Because to me, what defines an individual is everything about them, their hopes, their desires, their dreams, their passions, etc. And if I am a parent and my child is in hell, I think I'm going to be sad about that. But if you're not supposed to be sad in heaven, and then are you in heaven? I mean, if you're in heaven and this God creature has made you forget about your past life, well, then you're not you anymore.
If they can, in this life, believe mutually exclusive things, and somehow reconcile that, then I'm sure that there's some sort of super drug that gets administered when you're in heaven such that those realities are put out of your mind. But even if we didn't have a hell to worry about for our loved ones, if we're only looking at heaven and what heaven is, I think I've seen it in an old episode of Twilight Zone that dealt with a little boy named Anthony Fremont who had the ability to wish people into the cornfield and turn them into unspeakable things. And just imagine being trapped in a house with a being that petty, vengeful, jealous, wrathful, vindictive in the extreme, and he knows what you're thinking. And you're there for eternity. Eventually, you're going to think something wrong. This is the perspective that heaven has always presented to me, being trapped with an inescapable tyrant.
Yeah. But if you're up there, and you're not, I mean, every one of the explanations that I hear from apologists puts it in the position of the person who is in heaven is not the same person who was down here. And so you didn't actually get to heaven. Some facsimile of you was created in heaven as an approximation. So nobody goes to heaven. Something to think about. We've got Robert in Cleveland.
Hello.
Hey, Robert, how are you?
Hey, pretty good. I just wanted to address some of the things you said about the Old Testament.
Okay.
I've actually been having a number of arguments with my theist friends about this. I do think it is immoral, but I wanted to maybe point out that you're being a little unfair.
About what?
Well, the treatment of
Please say
women who are
slavery.
taken captive.
I was just sitting here whispering, please say slavery. So you think I'm being unfair about slavery?
No, I just wanted to, okay, here we go. Deuteronomy 21, 10 through 14.
No, screw that. You've gone too far. It's in Exodus 21.
Oh, what do you mean?
Exodus 21, beginning with the first verse, it tells you about taking Hebrew slaves. And these are the laws that you're to set before them. If you buy a Hebrew servant, he is to serve you for 6 years, but in the 7th year he'll go free. That sounds kind of nice. However, if his master gives him a wife and she bears him sons or daughters, of course that wife and kids are now the master's property, and when it comes time for this guy to go free in his 7th year, and he says, I love my wife and kids and I don't want to leave them, then you take him before the judges, and then he becomes your property forever, and you put his ear up to the doorpost, you drive it all through it to put an earring in there to mark him as your property forever. So it tells you that you can only have Hebrew slaves for 6 years and then you have to let them go free, and it gives you the workaround to screw them out of going free. But that's not the big one. When you get down further around verse 20, if a man beats his male or female slave with a rod and the slave dies as a direct result, he must be punished. But he's not to be punished if the slave gets up after a day or two,
If he survives, right, exactly.
since the slave is his property. And then if you go forward to Leviticus, I think in 25, I think it may be, it specifically says that slaves are your property and you pass them on to your children as property. This lie of the revisionist Christian apologists that the Bible only supports taking captives or and having them work for a period of time or having indentured servitude is a terrible, vicious, stupid lie, because it's right there blatantly in their book. No, I wasn't
Yeah,
too
I agree with you.
I wasn't too soft on it.
I have
I
to
was
throw
soft.
something in there too. I mean, when I was a little bitty boy, and I was told that like most Christians, don't actually read the Bible. They just say what they believe, or maybe they adhere to a religion for cultural reasons. But I was told that you don't really know until you read the Bible, and then it made sense. So I read it, and I didn't get very far into it before. I mean, I was told that this is the Word of God. This is going to be divine wisdom. This is going to be truth. This is going to be justice. And very quickly, I ended up throwing it across the room in disgust, because it was none of those things.
And I got to stop you there, and I had to put you on hold. I apologize. We're completely out of time. This went by so fast. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Thanks, Aron, for coming down. It was great. We'll be at Threadgill's on Riverside for dinner. Appreciate everybody who showed up in the studio. We'll see you all again next week. As a reminder, next week's show will be later. It's from 8 to 9:30 p.m. And don't call and complain. Call and thank them for letting us put on such good entertainment. We'll see you then. We are off the air.